Right, hello everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about how to approach content strategy for e-commerce. There we go, another intro slide. I am a client partner at Resignal and a data journalist for Systrix. I'll be using a little bit of my Systrix data, stuff that I've worked on with Steve in my slides today, just to sort of frame a couple of the recommendations around content strategy. So starting off with strategy itself, like I know pretty cliche having a dictionary definition slide in a presentation, but here it is in the context of a content strategy itself. So when you are creating a content strategy, there's some like key things to bear in mind. So obviously it's got to be founded in research, based on focused on an intended outcome as well, and prioritized to deliver results. So depending on the outcome that you choose, so the KPI specifically, you will want to have the prioritization of, say, your content delivery roadmap to reflect those KPIs themselves. And then before we actually get into how to do the content strategy, starting with the end in mind. So starting with your KPIs, your results, it's best to be specific or as specific as possible. So for example here, just a couple of examples. So we've got one that's like 20% increase in organic traffic to PLP. So really, if that was your goal, a large portion of the talk does actually focus on like product landing page content strategy. You would prioritize that in your roadmap, it goes without saying. It's kind of simple. And then the 10%, the example, like the 10% growth in overall traffic, like you would tend to, well, depending on where the opportunity presented itself when you were doing your initial research, you would either choose to optimize like certain areas of your website, probably get a lot more traffic from informational terms. It's not necessarily capped by search demand in the same way. So something else that's like not necessarily unique to myself. This isn't like a new invention. I'm sure everybody's seen this. So creating content strategy requires you to create content across the entire user journey. This goes for retailers and brands. There's a bit of a mention before, I think, of missing this area for like retailers and brands, like the informational aspect. We have some data to share around that, like specifically what the sort of percentages are actually like. So when you're creating the strategy, you want to start with like the awareness, then consideration and conversion, page types as well, in terms of like what page types we're optimizing for. I've put them at the bottom here. I'm going to be focusing mainly on the first two areas with this one. Like PLPs to a degree at the conversion level, depending on, in the example given here, like the gel Nimbus is a specific product that ASICS, one of our clients, sell. If somebody was to search just gel Nimbus, which they probably would, nobody knows specifically the model number always that lands you on a product page. Some people might do, but you would actually get a category page, and technically it's like a conversion style search term. So I've included that one in there. So back to the informational content aspect. So around towards the end of last year, I did some work with Systrix on looking at like the highest performing retail sites within the UK, and in the data set, sort of a split between like informational SERPs for retail and like conversional sort of commerce SERPs. And in the informational search opportunities, only 6.6% of actual retailers are showing there. So I think it was Jerry that mentioned before around the affiliates. They are stealing your clicks, basically. So get right in those informational pieces of content. There's an element to like third-party reviews in that, which is like always going to be beneficial. Like having a third-party expert talking about a product that isn't yourself is always going to be beneficial. Doesn't mean you can't start talking about informational content. So quickly running through the, I guess, framework. So the hub and spoke model. Like a lot of people know what this is. I'm just going to regurgitate some stuff now and add my own little bits in there as well. So continuing with the running theme. first of all, as a brand, in this case, ASICS, these aren't the exact sort of content pillars that we use for ASICS, but so we sell running shoes as a brand. Our customers are like one of the 5 things below. So starting out running, competing in races, wanting to train more effectively, sometimes getting injured, most of the times getting injured if you're a runner, I'm sure you can relate to that. And then running on different terrain as well. So we sort of take those ideas. So bearing in mind at this point, we've not actually used a search tool. This is customer intelligence, like understanding your customer specifically before turning to a search tool. So in this example here, again, sort of taking inspiration for what we've done with ASICS, but not exactly the same. You've got your hub, which would be, in this case, running advice, and then the spoke. So this is the subtopics underneath would be necessarily what you would create your topics under. So say under marathon training, if you wanted to do something really ambitious, like run a marathon in under 3 hours, you might write like how to run a marathon in under 3 hours or something like that, and then like a specific training plan for that. Maybe we'd tag that under training programs as well if we had that facility on the website. So moving into how you actually get to that point. You always start off with the research, so keyword research and the SERP analysis as well. It's important at this point, again, sort of mirroring what Jerry said earlier, don't just take what you see in the search tools for like gospel, basically. If you're not looking at the SERP, you don't necessarily know what you're trying to rank for. It's like you've only got half of the picture. Because also, say when you start doing the informational research, there might not always be informational content hubs or informational pieces of content displayed in those SERPs. It might be best geared to a different type of page, really. So using those, the keyword research that you would then obviously, so you create your keyword groups. I'm not obviously going into keyword research in detail. That's a completely different thing. I'm assuming a level of knowledge there. And then moving on to clustering those keywords and creating your topics. So you obviously want to create your topics based on the keyword group. So these are the topics that you're going to write for your informational content hub that would fit under. So each topic that you would write about would typically fit under one of the 5 spokes that we talked about earlier. At this point, factor in existing content that's on your website already as well. Because not all the existing content is going to be useful in, say, if you're doing this for the first time. But some of it could be rewritten, some of it might be really well optimized anyway. And then you move into the briefing and production stage. So at the point of creating a content strategy, I would recommend, especially for the informational thing, the amount of research that tends to go into this first place. You really need to write the briefs like at the point of doing the strategy. It might seem like a lot of work at that point, but writing the briefs there means that you're not going to forget stuff. Or when it gets delegated to, say, a copywriter in 3 months' time, they're not getting a list of keywords and just one headline. They have a brief. This is the headings that should be in it. This is exactly what questions you should be answering with their content. So moving to the commercial aspect now, the category pages specifically, not necessarily talking about product pages too much in this just because of the 20-minute time limit. So leveraging category page opportunities. So first of all, knowing your content format. So the actual like PLP content format that you have access to. Bearing in mind this isn't set in stone. Obviously, if you've got a good relationship with your dev team and some like intelligence to back it up, like from data from like other competitors, you can probably get the content format changed. Just in this example, we've got the top ranking website for full suspension mountain bike in the UK. As you can see on the landing page that Halfords have got here, they've got a little bit of the typical like banner copy at the top, but at the bottom they do have a bunch of FAQs. Now, more often than not, you will have this content on your page to use, some sort of like banner copy or content at the bottom. But not all necessarily show the FAQs, and sort of deciding whether or not to have those FAQs in there could be dictated by what you see in the search results. So, for example, in this search result here specifically, so just a random find, searching espresso machine. So leveraging FAQs on your PLPs can give you more SERP coverage, and also provide, that's not necessarily a good thing for you if you're trying to get clicks through to your site, but also you've got a higher chance if your box is bigger, I guess, and there's like 2 additional click opportunities there within the expandable boxes. So the content shown here in the bottom right is essentially just directly being like copied into Google there as well, into the search results. So the first 2 aspects there covered like maximising your sort of existing content opportunities. But what about like the new stuff? Because invariably, like with your e-commerce content strategy, you're probably going to focus on the pages that you have, optimizing those pages that exist on your site. But there's always opportunities to create new pages and factor those into your content strategy as well, because they are going to require content, especially if you've got a content format that requires banner copy, or if the category page itself can facilitate FAQs that people are actually searching for. So in this example, sort of, I don't know if I've done too well with the description here, but essentially the big blue area is like all of the possible categories for the products that you sell. I'm not talking about like reframing your products completely. Like for example, with ASICs, we'd never recommend them to launch like a hiking boots page with their existing product listing. Like don't do that just because you think there's like search volume there. Your products have to match like the category that you're launching, but there are missed opportunities here. So for example, with ASICs, we had almost like 2 categories, like trail running shoes, like waterproof trail running shoes sort of thing, but people are actually searching for like Gore-Tex trail running shoes, and ASICs make them. It's like a sort of specific product. But we never had a category for it, and it was sort of overlooked because we've got these 2 pages here, and then we did this, and this was one of the things that popped out. So you can laugh at me if you want with this one, because it's a bit of an unusual method for content gap analysis, but it doesn't work for everyone. I've tried it for a few sites, it's just not worked. But what you need to do is get your top 3. So just to explain actually what the outcome for this is a bunch of category pages that don't exist on your site that your competitors are getting traffic for. So you want to get your top 3 closest competitors, crawl their PLPs, preferably something like Screaming Frog, export all the H1s and dedupe. At this point, you're probably like, why H1s? But H1s, typically, they're going to be very, very similar. Like, there's only so many ways you can say, like, men's running shoes. Like, if you're trying to come up with something unique, all that stuff keywords in there, if it's a competitor that's stuffing keywords in the H1, then you don't want to be copying them. So there is that. So crawl all the PLPs, export the H1s, dedupe those H1s, so at this point you'll have like a unique list. Crawl your PLPs, export your H1s, and then basically do a VLOOKUP on that to find the H1s that are existing out there but not on your site. This does require a bit of manual, like, you've still got to go through them, basically. It's not easy in terms of like, you just get this list and you send it to somebody and go create these pages. It's you should be looking through these and like trying to match keywords to these new pages that you're looking at, doing the SERP analysis for them. So you can filter on top of this as well. I can share this in a bit more detail. If anybody's interested in it, you can ask me a bit more about the process and I can go into it in a lot more detail. But in summary, basic PLP strategy outline. So optimizing the existing, which was like the first 2 things. So leveraging your existing content format, optimizing the existing content to match the current search intent. So that's where your SERP analysis comes in. matching the keyword research with that. And then the prioritization of actions actually relates to both of these. I couldn't figure out a way to put this on the slide without it looking weird, and I kind of like this layout once I'd chosen it. So creating new. So you want to highlight your content gaps, first of all. Like everybody talks about gap analysis. I've just given you one way that I do it. There's many, many more ways. So leveraging existing CMS functionality. This is a deep topic in itself. But at this point, if you go, let's create some new product categories to cover like areas that we're not currently covering, it's very likely that those product categories are actually in a way accessible through filters on your site. So you can just leverage your CMS to create static pages, almost like indexable pages for those, if your CMS has the functionality to add custom content to those pages. And then the last one, create a keyword content map. So really basic, again, covers both of those. An acknowledgement at this point, and something that's been mentioned a little bit. Kushal, my colleague, mentioned it earlier. So a study that was done by SEO Clarity last year, I think it was last year anyway, I guess that doesn't matter, recently, 85% of apparel keywords in their test of 150,000 search terms triggered this popular products pack in US SERPs on the first page. This is what we're talking about, where we used to mainly see PLPs, but now it's products. How does this relate to content strategy, you're probably thinking, because really this isn't a content optimization job. What it is if your content strategy is the only thing you're focusing on, and this is like, you're putting all the effort into your content strategy for PLPs, just bear in mind that neglecting this, you're not necessarily making the best use of your time in a way. So bear in mind that these guys are probably going to be taking some of the clicks away from what, say, your PLP content strategy could have been like 2 or 3 years ago. And then sort of another curveball in a way, I guess. So we've talked about PLPs, like the traditional style, so a list of products on a page. And I've talked about informational content, so it goes without speaking, it's sort of like an article layout. In this example, within the UK, we've got a Google search for buy home gym equipment. I've put buy in brackets there because the search is pretty much the same regardless, which is also interesting in itself, but I won't necessarily talk about that right now. But if you search home gym equipment, you've got Argos showing in the top position there with almost like an informational sort of hybrid piece of content. I guess in a typical fashion, it's referred to as like a sort of like a landing page. But it does rank for some really good queries. And then at the bottom, we've got John Lewis and another one called Home Gym Supply, which is actually a home page. It sort of stands out, but the content format's kind of the same as the first two highlighted ones there. So this is where the SERP analysis comes into it, and like when to leverage these page types and how to fit them into your content strategy. When doing your keyword research, if like the keyword group mainly returns like blended results. So by blended results, I mean this previous slide. Then consider the navigational categories. I've called them navigational categories here. Many of you might have a different name for these things. I couldn't find anything that I could sort of settle on, so I just called them navigational categories. So we've got the example from Argos. At the bottom of the page, there's actually some popular products. There's sort of a bit more content below there as well, like how-to sort of things. So it's mainly informational in nature, but also leaning you towards a purchase. And then in the bottom left, there is a Systrix visibility graph that shows the growth of the directory, so the subfolder that holds these pages in for Argos over a 5-year period. So you can see they are certainly growing. I'd recommend just checking that out itself, that actual subfolder, looking at the keywords, looking who else ranks there. It's quite interesting. So just wrapping it up. Actions for each stage of the user journey. So we've got the first set of actions, the awareness. So yeah, create a content hub framework, create your content hub, the hub and spoke model. Research topics and SERPs. Don't neglect the SERP analysis. Create content briefs, simple as that. Obviously the content production comes after that. And then the consideration and conversion, so developing your content format. So like a page with just a list of products probably isn't going to cut it most of the time. You need to add an additional bit of context on there. Something I didn't mention earlier is don't add too much content on there, because we all know it messes with the context of that page itself and causes issues. Then I'll just quickly fly through these ones now because time is going. The conduct the gap analysis. So the gap analysis, you don't have to do that. Maybe you're confident that your categories cover all of the categories that you possibly could. And then, so create a list of the navigational category opportunities as well. That's probably like the biggest call out there, really. Some really good opportunities to leverage. Even less people are leveraging those than, say, the informational content on retail sites. And then finally, the prioritization of content production against KPIs. So you want to basically, after you've done all the research, put all your individual tasks, if you will, in sort of like an effort impact matrix and prioritize this way. Create a roadmap that reflects your KPIs. So say, going back to the start, if your KPI is to increase revenue, to organic revenue, to PLPs, focus on the PLPs first. If it's like we want to have the best brand-owned informational content asset, focus on that first. Although that is a very lofty and long-term goal. And that is it. Thank you.